The whole promise of humanity is that we advance towards a better future. And what we are living through now is a time of regression. I mean, Islamists are looking to go back to the 12th century. You know, it seems very odd. On the one hand, everyone celebrates the high technology that we have. But morally, spiritually, humanistically, we are going backwards. Our capacity for hate has completely outstripped our ability and willingness to love.
What is your thoughts on Trump?
Well, obviously a very complicated figure. You know, his mannerisms, his lack of diplomacy, his boorishness, his, seeming unwillingness, sort of a kind of pettiness against his enemies. Having said all that, I'm not unmindful of Donald Trump's many flaws, but how Jewish Americans do not stand and applaud him is just shocking. It's appalling, actually. It speaks to a fundamental problem in the United States among Jews and progressive and Democrats as a fundamental lack of patriotism.
Decency and indecency is something that we should be able to identify within ourselves. But I do want to be an optimist. I want to be an optimist, Thane. There was a time when I graduated with my degree in Middle East Studies. I held a party where I baked a cake. Half of it was a Palestinian flag and half of it was an Israeli flag. I truly believe in humanitarian ideas. I am baffled, shocked, I am angry, I am isolated, I am frustrated by the reality of a world gone mad. I think you are as well. And I think that we need more people who are not afraid to speak. But how close are we to a party in a Canada or the USA rising to power with an agenda that is extremely bad news for the Jews? And I think also could be the fragmentation of the United States. It could be a complete civil fragmentation and civil war.
If Israel wasn't in existence, and if Israel was not a global military power, I think we would have been here already. One of the things that the Islamists and the Marxists have achieved with extraordinary success is they've taught a large segment of America to hate themselves. There is an enormous amount of self-hatred in the United States.
It happens from a sense of self-worth and self-esteem.
Yeah. If you're a white person, you have to hate yourself. This is an extraordinary achievement, but they have been, through propaganda and brainwashing, they have been taught that this is what they should think. And so this problem, which Jews, in my view, American Jews, are at the highest level of this sickness. They see
the self-hating Jew.
The self-hating Jew and hatred of Israel. This narcissism, I call it moral narcissism.
I am Israel Ellis, and this is The Unfiltered View, a companion to the wake-up call. Please don't be shy. Share this episode. Follow me on IsraelEllis.com and on Substack. Trump. Tell me your thoughts about this highly controversial president and sort of the contradictions that he represents in his actions and what he thinks. What do you think of his current administration? Is he divine providence? Is he completely insane? Is he the most strategic president we've ever had? What is your thoughts on Trump?
Well, obviously a very complicated figure. You know, his mannerisms, his lack of diplomacy, his boorishness, his, seeming unwillingness, sort of a kind of pettiness against his enemies. There are, his utter disdain for coming across as presidential. These things are all real. I left the Democratic Party because of its anti-Semitism, its open anti-Semitism, and its hatred of Israel. I did not vote for Donald Trump until this most recent election. I'm now a registered independent. I'm not a Republican. But having said all that, I'm not unmindful of Donald Trump's many flaws, but how Jewish Americans do not stand and applaud him is just shocking. It's appalling, actually. It speaks to a fundamental problem in the United States among Jews and progressive and Democrats as a fundamental lack of patriotism. One of the things that the Islamists and the Marxists have achieved, I can't speak for Canada, but what they have achieved that what has you and I started your podcast discussing this alliance, this unholy alliance between progressive Marxists and Islamists. One thing that they've achieved with extraordinary success is they've taught a large segment of America to hate themselves, which is not an easy thing to pull off. There is an enormous amount of self-hatred in the United States.
And this self-hatred is it's a psychological trauma,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it happens from within. It happens from a sense of self-worth and
yeah.
self-esteem.
If you're a white person, you have to hate yourself. If you're a pro-American, you have to hate yourself. And in order to prove your virtue, you have to beat your breasts at night, screaming at the world, I am a white person and I'm a terrible person. This is an extraordinary achievement. Now, the people that are screaming this are imbeciles. It's true, they might be highly educated imbeciles, but they're imbeciles. But they have been, through propaganda and brainwashing, they have been taught that this is what they should think. And so this problem, which Jews, in my view, American Jews, are at the highest level of this sickness, the highest level. They see
The self-hating Jew.
the self-hating Jew and hatred of Israel. This narcissism, I call it moral narcissism.
What would you say of a guy like Bernie Sanders, or even better? We've got actual people who've been a product of the Holocaust, who've turned against Jewish people, who've used their funds, guys like Bernie Sanders. I mean, these are clearly people who are, they're just so wrapped up in their own disillusionment, dissonance, or
and
self-hatred.
Narcissism.
And absolutely.
Because narcissism is to say, look at me. I have a Brooklyn accent. That's Bernie Sanders. I have a Brooklyn accent. I lived in Israel as a boy for a little while as a teenager, and I hate Israel. Look at me. I'm going to scream the word genocide, and I'm going to make it impossible for people not to repeat the word genocide, because they're going to say, he's Jewish and he's screaming genocide. He must be right. Yes, you should read Thane Rosenbaum's book, because if you read my book, you'll realize that Bernie Sanders is responsible for part of this problem. He was the one after 2014 that exaggerated the number of Palestinians that were killed in the last war. And he was the one that introduced the idea of disproportionality. He did it. He got the numbers wrong and he misstated the law. And everyone has followed him ever since. So, but look, I'm not
the ultimate alliance with the Marxist and jihadist agenda. I mean, I think that is, kind of the title of Bernie Sanders' biography.
Yeah, no, and it's worked for him. He's got the Bernie Bros. But I think that this achievement of self-hatred, American hatred, is Jewish self-hatred, is something that is very hard to defeat. Very hard to defeat. And the thing about Trump is that it's appalling to me that I see this on people on Facebook, I'm attacked all the time, largely by Jews or by liberals. And I have progressive gravitas. I'm not a natural conservative. I'm a classic 19th century liberal. I'm not a crazy person. I can hold two different ideas in different hands. I'm not so crazy that I start screaming at people. I'm a liberal. A true liberal means I'm open to ideas. I'm open for business. That's an actual liberal. What people now call liberals are really progressives who are illiberal. Progressives are illiberal. I'm liberal. I'm open for business. You won't hear me screaming at you. I'll say something like, well, I haven't thought about it in that way, but I'll give it some thought. I don't think I agree with it, but I appreciate you giving me that perspective. That is a liberal person. That is not a progressive. Progressive people, their demand is you think like us, group think. If you don't think like this, you are morally debased. You are morally beyond the pale. That's illiberal. That's not liberalism. To call someone, to cancel them, to denounce them, to shout them down, that is the opposite of liberalism. But that's what the progressive parties in the West have achieved. But it's hard to imagine, to me, that you don't look at the scorecard and say, gee, since the fall, when Donald Trump looked like that election was turning and the focus was on the election, Israel at that point had a free hand and were able to, that's when the war in Lebanon came to an end. That's when things started picking up. Everything started in the fall before the election. Then after the election, Israel had a real free hand. Then the United States participates in destroying, at least for the time being, Iran's nuclear enrichment capacities. How a Jewish person isn't saying, God, I got to at least thank Donald Trump. I just got to at least, I don't like him. I don't like what he stands for. I don't like the way he carries himself. I don't like his behavior. But I got to say, thank you for saving the lives of many Israelis. Thank you for making it possible that Israel, the nuclear Iran, is at least off the table for a while, Thank you for standing up for Jewish students on campus and pushing back by revoking, rescinding federal funding to universities that have done what I would say Canadians do in Toronto, which is to say, let the Islamists have their way. Let them have their fun. They want to hate you.
There's a complacency. Let
them have their fun. I don't want to lose their votes, and they're insane. They may blow something up. I don't want them blowing up my house. I like having my legs. Jews don't blow shit up. I'll just side with these lunatics and let them have their fun.
I think though, Thane, there is a silent majority out there. People who prefer to stay under the radar and not speak up. There is complacency. There is apathy. I would like to think that most people, if you talk to them in the street, they certainly aren't interested in giving up their freedoms in favor of Sharia law. I'd like to think that. I think that we've come to a time, you've talked about the confrontation of the narrative the battle being lost. I think that's a very sobering conclusion, and that is sobering.
I wish I felt otherwise, but let me just say one thing. I think you're absolutely right, Israel. I don't deny that at all. But I would say that's always been true in the world's global history of anti-Semitism, that there were always rabid Jew haters. But if you ask most people, they didn't feel that way. The problem is that the complacent bystander is always in the majority. He or she always holds all the cards, but they're afraid to participate. They're afraid to object. They're afraid to stand up. They're always afraid to stand up. And so what you see instead are the insanity, the people who are foaming at the mouth, and people who are people of goodwill go, I don't want to get involved in this shit.
It's an absolute world gone mad. And the insanity of it all is baffling and scary. But in the 1930s, the Nazis were dismissed as nutcases.
Exactly.
And how close do you think we are to that? I mean, there's the major differences, and the major difference being the existence of Israel. But how close are we to a party in a Canada or the USA rising to power with an agenda that is extremely bad news for the Jews, and I think also could be the fragmentation of the United States. It could be a complete civil fragmentation and civil war.
If Israel wasn't in existence, and if Israel was not a global military power, I think we would have been here already, Israel. I think
where do you live? What state?
In Brooklyn. I think we would have been here. I mean, we're in New York City, the largest population of Jews outside of Israel. We are about to elect an Islamist mayor.
I want to ask you, do you think he's going to get elected?
I can't see how he can lose.
I'm going to ask you one question, Thane, because I'm thinking about it here, and I think the question is even more prevalent where you are sitting right now. Are you thinking it too? Should I stay or should I go?
Look, all I could say is that the existence of Israel has been proven its value to the survival of the Jewish people. Again, if you were a French Jew, you would have said, Israel, I already moved 15 years ago. You're behind. You weren't paying attention. A lot of us already moved from Europe.
Did you hear Macron now established the Dreyfus Day or something to that effect?
There were reasons in European Jews to already move. I think more Jews will make Aliyah from Canada and the United States. I probably won't be one of them.
Thane, how about you? What are you going to do? You're going to come to Canada? Where are you going? You're going to have a Muslim mayor. You're going to have someone who's going to come hunting for you. What are you going to do?
My life is already complicated here, because I've been openly, honest about what Jews face and anti-Semitism. And I've been for many years as a law professor, again, pointed out the human rights violations committed under Sharia law and have been defending Israel. This book that you graciously are helping me promote today is not available in any physical bookstore. What does that tell you? They won't carry it.
Hello. My book, The Wake Up Call,
they won't carry
is not allowed to be marketed on Amazon. We cannot. They returned our marketing money.
Yeah, well, this book, you cannot have a book that says beyond proportionality, Israel's just war in Gaza. So I have paid a price many years for writing and saying the things. I have a weekly essay that comes out in the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles, and it is a truth-telling essay. It is a weekly truth-telling essay. So I don't know what things are going to look like, but I know this. I know that I and other Jews in Canada, United States, and Europe would be in a very different position if Israel was not existing. And yes, I do know I have an incredible option, moving to Israel. But I do think if you're asking me about Nazi Germany, let me just say this about that. The Nazis, most of them were not the general ordinary German never was as openly hostile and eliminationist about Jews as we now have. It's not. They use euphemistic language, the final solution to the Jewish question. The Muslims are talking about just killing Jews. They get right to it. They don't come up with euphemisms.
You've written a book, Saving Free Speech from Itself, and you argue in that book that some forms of speech may be too dangerous to protect.
Yeah.
And I think that this is one of those times. All of your books are incredible acts of courage.
Thank you.
You have used the pen as the sword.
Thank you.
And I think that, sir, you are an example of somebody who is not willing to remain silent, and where the words never again are about making sure that we're not silenced and that our voices are heard. While the confrontation with the narrative may be a battle that seems lost, I am also an internal optimist. I believe in divine intervention. I believe perhaps to a fault, I believe in divine providence. I am actually a liberal. There was a time when I graduated with my degree in Middle East Studies. I held a party where I baked a cake. Half of it was a Palestinian flag and half of it was an Israeli flag. I truly, truly believe in humanitarian ideas. I am baffled, shocked, I am angry, I am isolated, I am frustrated by the reality of a world gone mad. I think you are as well. And I think that we need more people who are not afraid to speak. We're coming up at the end of this podcast. I could sit and I could talk to you for a very long time, Thane. I love your smile. You have a beautiful smile.
I just want to say, I wanted to thank you for what you said a moment ago, because I don't hear that very often. I'm oftentimes, by the way, you started out a liberal. I was the literary editor for 6 years for Tikkun magazine. You could not be more left-wing than that magazine. And so I look at myself that I've largely stayed in the same spot. Everyone else moved. I haven't changed. But you're right. There are few people that are willing to speak openly, and the big difference between us is that you're more valuable because you are an optimist and I'm a cynic. I look at this and I say, I don't know how to fix this, and I think you remain sanguine that it's fixable.
In 1993, I ran for a federal member of parliament here in Canada, and I ran for the NDP. And people are shocked to hear that. But the truth is that I openly will admit I am a liberal. I want to believe in humanity. And in my book, I talk about meeting a physician named George. I was in Thailand, in Koh Phangan, in a beautiful camp there, in a beautiful retreat, healing retreat after October 7th with a bunch of Israelis. And I met George, and he was a physician from Germany, and he absolutely had no idea. He really, really was not involved. He wasn't part of the narrative, and he certainly didn't care. He just wanted to live his life. And he said something very profound to me, very simple. He just said to me, I think everything's going to be okay because I believe in humanity. And ultimately, humanity will win because humanity is good. Now, I mean, if you look at the story of Cain and Abel, we see it from the beginning. We see two very important things. We see the idea of goodness is there, but we also see the destruction and evil. And there was no Bible and there was no documentation to tell somebody, do not murder your brother. And yet, when Cain murdered his brother and God asked him, he says in a defensive way, I am not my brother's keeper, because he knew he was guilty of something. And I think that decency and indecency is something that we should be able to identify within ourselves. And what you said about people hating themselves is, wow. I mean, it could not be truer than what you said. There is a sense, a self-esteem. I wrote a book called Moving Through Walls about 5 years ago, where I talk about the fact that the greatest problem with self-damage is the sense of self-worth that we carry with us, that sense of guilt, that sense of have we not achieved. And maybe it's because we really do want to make the most out of life. We don't want to defy the gift that God has given us. And it's not that I'm a highly religious person. I am spiritual, but I do want to be an optimist. I want to be an optimist, Thane. And I want to believe that humanity will prevail. And I'm calling on humanity. I'm calling on all people to prevail and to do what's right. I want to just end this, and it could be on any note you want. And I want to ask you a question. And that question is that if everyone was listening right now, if the world was listening to you, Thane Rosenbaum, what would you want them to hear you say?
Well, if you look around the world, in the condition of the world, it looks like as if our advancement has been regressive, that we're going backwards. You know, the whole promise of humanity is that we advance towards a better future. And what we are living through now is a time of regression. I mean, Islamists are looking to go back to the 12th century. You know, it seems very odd. On the one hand, everyone celebrates the high technology that we have. But morally, spiritually, humanistically, we are going backwards. Our capacity for hate has completely outstripped our ability and willingness to love. So on the one hand, you know, we invent new gadgets, but the thing that we thought we would do, the march of civilization, the very thing that Freud talked about in Civilization and Its Discontents, that the advancing of civilization might even bring about discontents. We are Freudian on crack right now. We are going backwards. On the one hand, we have great claims to civilization, and then we have great claims to barbarism. Look at October 7th. It's the absolute antithesis of civilization. And so how is it possible that we're talking about artificial intelligence? We're talking about, you know, robotics on scales that we've never seen, or medications that we could never have imagined. And yet when it comes to a more essential aspect of what civilization looks like, it's regressive, it's barbaric. We are justifying barbarism. We are literally saying by any means necessary. We're literally saying, yes, we should torch Jewish babies. Yes, they should be. So I just think that we could look at that conflict, that contrast. People should be shocked. People should just listen to what I just said and go, whoa, he's got a point. How are those? They're irreconcilable. We are advancing and we are regressing, and we don't seem to either acknowledge it or feel appalled by it.
We made the deal with the devil. We've partnered with death cults, and we've given a seat at the table to one of the most brutal terrorist organizations in the world, and we've allowed for the commoditization of lives, of humanity, in negotiation for their release. When we talk about our hostages, it is terribly disgusting. It is really concerning. And what you said about love, I interviewed a Holocaust survivor in one of the episodes of the Unfiltered View. I think it was 2 episodes ago, Saul Naiman. And that was his message. His message was, don't forget to love. Maybe we forgot to love. Maybe we're afraid to love. Maybe we've been so pushed into a corner of consumerism, and we lack that spirituality, and we lack our relationship with God, and we're afraid of it, and we're afraid to come out there, and we're afraid to say, hey, I want to love you, I want to be loved, and it's okay. And maybe we need to come back to that. We've talked about so many things today, Thane. I really hope that the world listens to us. I hope that we're heard. I hope that perhaps we change someone's mind, that someone recognizes the dissonance of the current narrative, and that they come to the side of justice and humanity. I hope that our words, whether on paper or in voice or in what we're doing here, that there is a purpose in speaking up. Noah, in the Bible, there's a story of Noah. He builds an ark while people stand laughing at him because of the impending doom and destruction of the world. And regardless of whether you look at that as a metaphor or you look at that as natural happening, maybe what we're doing, Thane, is we're also building an ark.
Well
and
said.
And it's a warning. It's a warning. And we're asking. I am begging. I am begging the world. I could be quiet. I could go amongst my business and I don't have to say anything, and I'll probably be okay for my generation, maybe my kids' generation, but not their kids' generation. And I'm begging, Thane, I am begging anyone out there who's listening, please love yourself enough to confront the lovers of death. Thane, I want to thank you for joining me today and for lending your voice to the urgent conversation about justice and moral clarity. We talked about moral equivalence. We talked about the moral narrative. We talked about moral responsibility. Your work is an important work. It's a reminder that words matter and that silence in the face of pure evil and complicity is unacceptable. And I hope that people will take example of you, and they will also make their voices heard, just as I am trying to make my voice heard.
Well, you're doing a great job. Thank you so much, Israel.
Thank you very much, Thane. I appreciate it. I am Israel Ellis, and this is the Unfiltered View. I'm not afraid to speak, and neither should you. I've done this podcast as a companion to the wake-up call. I'm going to ask you, don't be shy. Get it out there. Share it. Comment on this episode. Ask me the tough questions. Ask Thane the tough questions. Follow me on IsraelEllis.com and on Substack. And I thank you for tuning in today when it's a lot easier to tune out.